If there's one thing you should know about me, it's not that I haven't seen genuine love or affection for half a dynasty, it's that I watch a lot of weird films, like some sort of masochist reenacting the Divine Comedy, except I sit alone in my room and watch a 4-hour-long behind-the-scenes documentary. The point of this list is to hopefully introduce people to some pretty great films that have come out over the past couple of years that unfortunately got drowned out by shit like Old, The Boss Baby, or the critically acclaimed Boss Baby 2. So I'm going to have to exclude older, obscure films like The Cremator or The Celebration because they do actually have a fanbase of kinosexuals such as myself. I'm going to preface this list with a bunch of documentaries you should also check out, but apparently no one cares about documentaries, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. We've got Dark Days, The Collective, Jesus Camp, Titicut Follies, just to name a few. But now that the boring ass part is out of the way, let's get started with my top 10 films of 1215 BC. At number 560, we have November. November is really one bizarre film. So much so that I can't even do justice to summarizing the plot, nor can anyone really. That's not to say it's incomprehensible nonsense, or even strictly speaking hard to follow, but this is really a film you watch for its atmosphere and style. November is a Estonian folk horror slash absurdist comedy slash fever dream slash period piece. If I'm speaking complete gibberish to you, then don't worry, it only gets worse. Most characters speak in poetic riddles, the world is plagued with curses and rituals that are never really explained, the main character is a furry? Whilst the opening 5 minutes has some janky green screen and drone footage, the film's technical side is pretty damn great. The harsh black and white cinematography is exactly my shit and helps drastically build the film's atmosphere. This film also introduced me to what now might be one of my favorite composers, because the score for the film is the spice. If you're not really a fan of films that have a wandering plot, then this maybe isn't for you, but if you want to see something that is completely original and really weird, then I'd highly recommend checking this out.
On vaja tööd anda. Minu peremees ei osanud tööd anda. Ja siis ma pöörasin tal pea kukla taha.
No kes see loll oli?
Üks karjapoiss.
Laps, muidugi.
At number 76 is The Savages. Savages is a dark comedy drama written directed by Tamara Jenkins, unfortunately no relation to Barry Jenkins. The film follows a brother and sister as they take care of their mentally deteriorating elderly father. With a premise like that, you would be expecting something that's quite depressing, and it certainly has its depressing elements, but the film knows when to be comedic or sentimental. Both Laura Linney and Philip Seymour Hoffman's performances are fantastic, but the best aspect to this film is the script, and the dialogue is just super. This is probably one of the most accessible films on this list, so I'd highly recommend checking it out.
Alright, and actually, this upward mobility fixation of yours, it's counterproductive and frankly pretty selfish.
Selfish?
Yeah, because it's not about Dad, it's about you and your guilt. That's what these places prey upon.
I happen to think it's nicer here.
Of course you do. Because you're the consumer that they want to target. You're the guilty demographic. The landscaping, the neighborhoods of care, they're not for the residents, they're for the relatives. People like you and me who don't want to admit to what's really going on here.
Which is what, John?
People are dying, Wendy. Right inside that beautiful building right now, it's a fucking horror show. Right, and all this wellness propaganda and the landscaping, it's just there to obscure the miserable fact that people die. And death is gaseous and gruesome, and it's filled with shit and piss and rotten stink.
At number 13 is Everything Beautiful is Far Away. If you find yourself criticizing films for their lack of plot, then this probably isn't for you, but the best way to describe this film is it's like wrapping yourself in a nice warm blanket and watching a comfort movie, except the movie is full of Darth Vader's worst nightmare and a hidden layer of existentialism akin to Nier Automata. It's definitely one of those quirky films that people like to criticize as style over substance, only to turn around and soy face over the latest fetishization of nostalgia. But I wouldn't say it's on the same level of quirk that a Wes Anderson or Miranda July film has. It's got great cinematography and performances, but its standout aspect is the music, which ironically sounds like a water level from an old Nintendo game.
Chances are we're not going to make it.
Learner, it's gross.
Roller, spit it out! This is dactyl root. It's
Hashtag release the soundtrack for both this and I'm Thinking of Ending Things, please. It's a fun little sci-fi fantasy film, so go check it out.
There's a world of people doing things. There's a world of people doing things. There's a world of people. Morning. Hungry?
At number 69, we have The Tribe. The Tribe is a perfect example of a familiar story told through brilliant filmmaking, and it kinda has to be familiar in order to work. The film follows a troubled teenager that moves to a school for the deaf and mute, only to be swept up into the school's gangster-like group. Where the tribe becomes sort of an anomaly is in its filmmaking. It's entirely told through Ukrainian Sign Language with no verbal translation or subtitles, not only meaning that you are left to interpret the basics of any given scene, but are also interpreting every single gesture on a line-by-line basis, meaning that every single scene will play out like this. This film also has no soundtrack and each scene is told in a single take. I'm a very big fan of directors with uncompromising and bold visions regardless of whether the final product isn't that great, and I can still appreciate the film for having a unique voice. Each scene of The Tribe is so meticulously coordinated, sometimes with dozens of extras all having individual conversations and actions. It is masterful in its craft. My only recommendation is that you don't really watch it with your family because there are some pretty explicit sex scenes and graphic violence. The film also contains depictions and themes of stuff like this, so if that's not for you, maybe skip it. Being a Russian film, it's upsetting, disturbing, raw, and brutal, but oh boy do those Russians know how to end a film. They really know how to make you feel like shit, and if you like those kind of films, then definitely check out Beanpole, Leviathan, and Loveless. The Tribe is the definition of a one-of-a-kind experience, so check it out. At number 46, we have Foxtrot. There are a lot of anti-war films out there, with some of them simply just saying war is bad. And yeah, I agree with that, but there is so much more to it, and I'm happy to say Foxtrot is one of the best deconstructions of war, military systems, and masculinity I've ever seen. I've only learnt this after watching this writer-director's first film, Lebanon, but he actually served in the military as a tank operator, which makes his near mastery of filmmaking even more impressive. Foxtrot is a slow and patient film that focuses on grief and trauma that war causes, primarily focusing on a father receiving news of a tragedy and how he and his wife deal with it. From the premise alone, one would be expecting a depressing drama, and that definitely is the case, but it is also surprisingly funny and heartfelt at points, even offering philosophical perspectives to generational trauma and the meaninglessness of war. The cinematography and performances are phenomenal. The opening scene even features a 10-minute long take that purely focuses on the father trying to come to terms with the death of his son. There's so much authenticity and care put into this film, and this is a director I will definitely be keeping my eyes on. And if you like this, then check out his first film, Lebanon, from 2009. At number 112, we have Age Out. Age Out is written and directed by A.J. Edwards. Some of you might recognize that name as the guy who edited Terrence Malick's Oh God, I'm Having an Existential Crisis trilogy, which should be a companion piece with Von Trier's Depression trilogy, but I digress. This is the second film of Edwards, with his first being a 19th century period piece that I am still yet to see, but I really want to because Age Out is actually really good. The film follows a recent 18-year-old that is just aged out of a foster home only to fend economically and socially for himself, with the story primarily focusing on two characters that act as the angel and devil on his shoulder. A lot of people have criticized it for being a ripoff of Malick's style, and sure, it is definitely influenced, but there is also a lot that is vastly different. Not that I want to spoil anything, but the ending employs some really small but cool creative choices in its presentation. The cinematography is excellent, the score by Colin Stetson is amazing as usual, Imogen Poots' performance is pretty great. Her character on paper should be pretty generic, but she is actually given a lot of depth, and her performance really helps in aiding this. I'm genuinely surprised she isn't even in more films because her performance always elevates the material. She is the best aspect of Vivarium, and her performance in Green Room is also pretty great. If you aren't really a fan of how Malick's plots are very loose and wandering, but you still like his visual style, then I'd highly recommend checking this out, as it is clearly a lot more structured and scripted, but it still maintains that signature Malick aesthetic.
This is always a summer spot for me when I was in high school.
Where'd you go?
Waco High. You?
McLennan.
For rough kids.
Did you go to Baylor?
No. I lost interest. My dad got sick and I just forgot about school. He was a teacher. I would have hated that.
At number 328, we have Utoya 22nd of July, not to be confused with Paul Greengrass' Netflix film 22nd of July. Utoya 22nd July is about the 2011 terrorist attack on the island of Utoya in Norway that resulted in 77 deaths, most of who were young adults. It goes without saying that the real life events are genuinely horrifying, but I think the best way to watch this film is to go in knowing as little as possible about the actual tragedy, because this film is entirely told from the point of view of a fictional victim on the island, and experiencing the confusion, anxiety, and fear along with the main character in real time is when the film is at its most effective. There are a couple of scenes in particular that won't leave my mind because of those very emotions. In terms of filmmaking, I would best describe it as a mix of Son of Soul and Victoria. It is a part of the whole fake to look like one take style that is becoming more increasingly popular with films like 1917 and Birdman. But in contrast to 1917, the one-take aspect isn't trying to make up for a generic story or other bland creative decisions. Utoya really utilizes the limited perspective to emphasize how terrifying the situation is. Not only that, but the real attack reportedly lasted 72 minutes, and from the first moment a gunshot is heard to the ending credits is exactly 72 minutes, effectively making this a real-time nightmare. There is even a sequence towards the middle of the film that really stuck with me because of how its real-time aspect trapped you in the situation. There also isn't a soundtrack until the end credits, and the cinematography uses a lot of documentary techniques, which really adds to the authenticity and chaos of it all. It doesn't really have a traditional structure, but that helps in aiding of anxiety leading to complete exhaustion. Not only that, but the performances are all pretty solid. If you're someone that argues that films are desensitizing us to violence, then you should really stop obsessing over action figures, and you probably haven't seen this film. Which is entirely fair, because why would you want to have an emotional reaction to art?
Dere kommer aldri til å forstå. Bare hør hva jeg sier. Ok? Ja, men altså, det er derfor det er viktig at vi er her. Ja, mamma, jeg skjønner det, men altså, vi er på en øy. Det er verdens tryggeste sted. Bare slapp av, ok? Du trenger ikke å bekymre deg.
At number 86, we have The Color of Forgotten Dreams. This is probably the most film student-y feeling film on this list, but similar to The Tribe, I'm more so recommending it for its presentational style. This film is entirely shot with consumer-grade VHS cameras in a circular aspect ratio. It is very bizarre and unique, but I can really see why people view it as nothing more than pretentious drivel. The film score is also appropriately weird, and some of the performances are pretty good, with others reminding you that this is a very film student-like film. But it definitely was one strange experience to say the least. The story is a series of vignettes following the personification of death as she interacts with various victims. It's certainly not for everyone, but you can watch the film for free on YouTube via Johnny Clyde's channel, so go check it out.
Jeśli dotrze do ciebie wiadomość o mojej śmierci, nie chcę, żebyś myślał, że to twoja wina. Wiedz, że w moim sercu nie było miejsca na ani jedną pozbawioną koloru myśl o tobie. Po prostu straciłem wiarę. Zarówno w Boga, jak i w siebie. W życie i w świat. Nie mogę dalej żyć.
At number 420, we got Reality. Reality is directed by this cheeky lad that made Rubber, which is about a homicidal car tire. Reality is basically a parody of something like Holy Motors. In where Holy Motors was mostly boring, pretentious, and thematically repetitive, Reality is nonsensical meta fun. If this film took itself really seriously, then it would be a complete flatline, but luckily this film is completely self-aware at how ridiculous its premise and story is. I mean, they cast Eric Wareheim from Tim and Eric, and his character is introduced as a principal who drives an army jeep in a dress. For some reason, it's never explained. This is also the plot description on Letterboxd. A wannabe director is given 48 hours by a producer to find the best groan of pain worthy of an Oscar, as the only condition to back his film. I do wish the film had the same challenging presentational style that was in the third act, but it's very much building up to that. And to see all the puzzle pieces fitting into place is honestly really fun. At 87 minutes, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's a lot of fun. Check it out.
Le prix du meilleur gémissement de douleur de l'histoire du cinéma est attribué à...
Jason Tantra.
Je peux pas me lever. Je peux pas me lever. Je suis collé au siège.
At 76, we've got I Think We're Alone Now. I Think We're Alone Now is a small-scale post-apocalyptic character study following sad Peter Dinklage. This film is definitely flawed, but I'm a really big fan of Reed Morano, who is probably most well known for her work on earlier episodes of The Handmaid's Tale. And if you've seen that show, she directed the episode with that hanging scene. She is also directing the new Charlie Kaufman script, so I do have high hopes. Morano is an insanely strong visual director, as she is also a cinematographer, and the film does look really good, but unfortunately it can be a little repetitive at points, but it goes in a really interesting direction in its third act. So if you like small-scale apocalypse stories, then I would highly recommend checking this one out. As a companion piece, I would also recommend The Survivalist, which is another post-apocalyptic character study that I'm purely adding on here to say if you want to see another adaptation of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, then check this out. It's got great performances and atmosphere, but what really makes this film stand out from other post-apocalyptic stories is its almost procedural focus on the practical side of surviving. I also really like first-time directors that put a large emphasis on character body language to communicate ideas instead of having the character just bluntly state it. It's a really great low-budget film, go check it out. At number Wingdings is The Other Lamb. Similar to The Tribe, The Other Lamb is a familiar story told through great filmmaking. The film is very well shot with a lot of beautiful landscapes and creative presentation choices, although story-wise it's not radically different from other cult horror films. Something that I love about films like this is their choice not to use any studio sets. This definitely could be because of its budget, but in this particular case it lends a lot of authenticity to the environments both visually and orally. The sound design especially is pretty goddamn great, and I'm also a very big simp for Irish landscapes. It also helps with the performances, as actors actually have something to interact with instead of standing lifelessly in a green screen room. I'm also only learning just now that the film's lead actress, Raffi Cassidy, is a month younger than me and has already starred in some pretty great films made by filmmakers that I love. So this film has an unintentional layer of existentialism, as I realize that I am 20 years old and the only thing I've really done with my life is complain about bad films being bad on the internet. So as a go cry for a minute, go check this film out.
Walk. Walk. Get up and show us. Walk. Come on. Walk. Walk. Walk!
At number 6 we have Christine. No, not this Christine, and no, not Kate Plays Christine, which also came out in 2016, even premiering at Sundance at the same time as Christine. Christine is a biographical drama following the news reporter Christine Chubbuck, who infamously committed suicide on live television in 1974. The film's score and cinematography are great, but by far the best aspect is Rebecca Hall's performance. Her performance as Christine is nothing short of phenomenal. Like Kristen Scott Thomas in I've Loved You So Long and Tim Roth in Chronic, Rebecca Hall is able to express so much of her character through very little dialogue. So much of their respective characters' histories is written right there on their face. The ways in which they carry themselves, their posturing, it's all brilliant. This film is also directed by Antonio Campos, who also directed Simon Killer and The Devil All the Time. Simon Killer is pretty fantastic character study, and I thought Devil All the Time was pretty great, which apparently no one else but me did. Oh no, a film that made me experience negative emotions. Oh no, why can't films exist so I can watch hot people being hot? Why is everyone gotta be so sad? Mean. Why is it so mean? I get that most of the time it is a meme, but there are seriously some people out there that will only watch a film because it has hot people in it. Also, catch no one saying that about any female actors, because then it would be objectification. I respect your opinion if you simply just didn't like a film, but if you're purely watching a film made by over hundreds of talented creatives that put so much time and care into a project only to want to jerk off the hot actors, then why watch a film at all? Just watch a PowerPoint presentation like this. Anyway, about this film that I was apparently talking about before. Christine does continue Campos's signature depressing tone, but that isn't to say it is forced nor disingenuous, and there are moments of levity early on. Whilst other depictions of mental illness can either be straight up offensive or completely fast to the point of comedy, Christine is able to explore depression in a really honest way. So if this looks like a film for you, or you just want to watch a great performance, check it out.
People are coming here from
Sorry,
all
can
over
we just stop for a second? Jane, stop. Can you get Gail? I thought she was meant to get some fresh flowers.
Oh, yeah, I told her to. It must have slipped her mind.
It slipped her mind? Well, I can't think about anything else. Sorry. So you're gonna have to. Someone get some fresh flowers.
I'm sorry, sir. We're just gonna a little bit. I'm sorry.
So that is my somewhat short list of somewhat recently released underground films. If you disagree or believe that I should have mentioned a film that you liked, be sure to comment below so I can thoroughly articulate why you are just wrong. At least you'll be able to say that you sat through a boring ass foreign movie, so that you can loudly tell people you were hip and cool before the eventual American remake comes out. In terms of next video, I'm hard at work at making a very long-winded essay/review of Netflix's The Witcher, which will eventually be used as the exact definition definition of who cares and who asked. The script is currently sitting at about 4,000 words, and I haven't really started an episode by episode critique yet, so yeah, that's gonna take a while. Expect YMS to be out with Synecdoche, New York Part 6 before I get around to releasing this abomination. Anyway, thank you for watching. You were nitpicking and biased. I win. Bye bye.